जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद जय द्वैत चंद्र जय गौरभक्त वृंद। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमस्ते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शुभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंश कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे। पादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य वाचालम बंगम यत्कृपातमहं वंदे श्री गुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवम श्री चैतन्य ईश्वर। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome to our Chaitanya Pravaha series. We are discussing the second chapter of the Madhya Lila. As we have discussed numerous times, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins the Madhya Lila by giving a synopsis of the entire Shesh Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Shesh Lila is the second half of the Lord's pastimes. The first 24 years being Adi Lila, and the remaining the Shesh Lila, which is 24 years after the Lord's sannyas, because the Lord manifested his pastimes in this world for a total duration of 48 years only. Quite young, 48. In another couple of days, I will be 48 years old. So I don't look that old, right? So, so not very long. Not very long. So always, our scriptures repeatedly say it's not so much about how long a person is alive. It's about how much value a personality has added to the world for whatever time he has spent here. There are many great personalities. Of course, I'm not comparing the Lord. The Lord is the Lord. In general, I'm making this point that there are many great personalities who left a huge impact on the planet. But in terms of number of years, did not spend that many. So the summary of these 24 years is given in the first two chapters of the Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Madhya Lila proper focuses on the 6 years of the Lord's pastimes after sannyas, which principally comprise the Lord's South India trip for a couple of years and the Lord's travels in and around, whether it be to Bengal, Prayag, Vrindavan, Kashi, Banaras, and so on and so forth. And we have discussed it summarily all these pastimes. We discussed that the last 18 years of the Lord's pastimes, the Lord especially spent in Puri. He was not traveling. The first chapter of the Madhya Lila covers a summary of the first 12 years of the Shesh Lila. So the first 6 years are the essential Madhya Lila, as we just mentioned, and the second 6 part of the first 12 years, the Shesh Lila, is that part where the Lord was based in Puri, but he was still involved in a bit of preaching, interaction. The second chapter of the Madhya Lila, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that now I'm going to focus this chapter on giving a brief synopsis of the last 12 years of the Lord's past, which are actually the subject matter of Antya Lila proper. This chapter is not very long, it's around 95 verses. But this is a very extraordinary chapter. I was really trying to wrap my head around how I should present this chapter, because the subject matter of this chapter is actually very, very high. Because the Lord's Antya Lila is actually focused on the Lord's purpose, his internal purpose of appearance, which is to be absorbed and taste and experience the mellows of love that Radharani experiences for Krishna. So first of all, we as conditioned souls don't even know what is devotion. And suddenly here comes a chapter where Krishna is trying to understand Radharani's devotion. And we all conditioned souls are sitting here trying to discuss about it. So I'm scratching my head, And after reading some of these verses, I don't know how to explain and what to explain. So this subject matter is very, very high. In the later part of this chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami himself says that actually this is very difficult for anybody to understand. So in fact, he encourages not to discuss this chapter except with really those people who can understand. So we will go through it in a very summary fashion. There are a lot of verses where there are deep, emotional verses which are coming from the lips of Radharani and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I will not go into that because I think that will be a bit too artificial, at least for me. Try to go into that subject matter. Of course, we should still read it for our own purification, very respectfully. Even if you don't understand, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that even if you don't understand this, you should go on hearing and reading, and gradually, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, one day we'll be able to understand and appreciate this subject matter. But of course, we have limited time now. We have another 50 minutes remaining. So we'll try to see what we can discuss. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins this chapter by saying that the last 12 years that I'm going to focus on is that part of the Lord's pastime where the Lord was experiencing intense separation from Krishna. And he says, I will describe what kind of transcendental ecstasies Lord Chaitanya was manifesting in that period because of that intense feeling of separation. So the focus is on what was the mood of Lord Chaitanya. That's why, if you can, so we can understand that this is going to be a very high subject matter. What is the mood? We're not talking about a devotee's mood. We are talking about the Supreme Lord's mood, the supreme state of separation. So, of course, these are very worshipable subject matters. It is like trying to jump to touch the moon. And no matter how high we jump, we'll not be able to touch it. But it's good. We at least know, okay, that is the pinnacle. It's good to know the pinnacle. And actually, it's true that bhakti, Krishna consciousness, Krishna bhakti especially, is actually such an unlimited ocean. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also at other places, it's such an unlimited ocean. We can only drink what we can according to our capacity, right? can only taste a drop. And even that one drop, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami can totally satisfy us. What is our capacity? We cannot drink the ocean. Krishna, in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is trying to drink the ocean. For us, one drop will drown us. We have a small cup. We go with a small cup to drink because we are thirsty, and suddenly a tsunami comes of water. How to drink? We will be swept away along with the cup. And no time to collect the water and drink. So this is that kind of subject matter. So this is a disclaimer upfront. The disclaimer is that I'm not qualified to discuss these very profound, deep subject matters, but we'll try to give a synopsis for our own purification. So may the Lord forgive me if I make any mistakes in my presentation. Seeking the blessings of Guru and Srila. So it is said that in the last 12 years, where the Lord is principally based in Puri. Now, please remember, if you remember, this period, Lord Chaitanya was staying in the house of Kashi Mishra. There's a room known as Gambhira. The word Gambhira means that room which is situated just beyond the corridor. The Lord would stay in that room, and we'll discuss a little bit about that, what kind of mood the Lord was in that Gambhira, but this is the background. So he would stay there. Most of the time, if, as we discussed, he would be associating with two of his most close associates. Anybody remembers who are those two very close associates that he would associate with?
Swarup Damodar
And Swarup Damodar Goswami, and anybody else? Second name?
Ramanandana.
Ramananda Rai. Yes.
Yeah.
Lalita and Vishakha.
Yeah.
Swarup Damodar is Lalita and Ramananda Rai is Vishakha Sakhi. Two confidential direct assistants of Srimati Radharani, Sakhis, most two confidential Sakhis. So it is said in this last 12 years, because the Lord was actually fulfilling, the Lord left the preaching to Nityananda Prabhu and others in the last 12 years. I have done whatever I have to establish. He had guided Rupa and Sanatan and the other Goswamis, put Raghunath Das in the care of Swarup Damodar. All setting the Lord did to make sure, the preaching mission continues. And the Lord essentially went into an inner mood, retirement from active. So this is how we should all work also. This is how we should plan our life. Gradually purify us to the level that at one point we can become exclusively absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Exclusively. But that we cannot do artificially. Not say, oh, today I'm retiring. From now I'm going to become absorbed. So absorption is not a button you can click. Now I'm absorbed. It doesn't happen. It's a cultivation. One has to purify and develop one's attachment to Krishna to a level that one can actually be absorbed. Anyway. So in these last 12 years, it is said, the Lord's state of mind, day and night, not just during the day and night, was like the mood of Srimati Radharani was feeling separation from Krishna, and especially Radharani's mood at the time when Uddhava came to Vrindavan to see the gopis. Now, this is a very interesting passage. Of course, none of these details are explained here, but just so that you get some context, at least at our level, what we can speak, we will speak. The other details are just far too high. In Dwarka, there was a very close confidential associate. He would see that Krishna is pining for the gopis. Can you imagine? Even though the Lord is in Dwarka, his still mind is in Vrindavan. And he would always be remembering about the gopis, Nanda, Yashoda, Radharani. Krishna's queens, Rukmini, Satyabhama, and others would complain. In the middle of the sleep at night, Krishna is sleeping next to them. And suddenly in his sleep, he is calling out, "Oh Radharani, where are you? I'm missing you. Oh Vishaka, where are you?" Can you imagine? Because I hope none of the ladies here have had such an experience. Of course, in today's world, if anybody has such an experience, it will be disaster. But it was not disaster there because there is no material lust, the transcendental realm. So they would think, oh, Krishna is sleeping next to me in unlimited opulence, but he's not remembering me, he's remembering another girl. How glorious will be the service of that devotee. That after 100 years, Krishna is remembering her. He has not seen her for 100 years. So we must learn from them. That is their mood. See, this is the elevated consciousness of the gopis of Vraja. Hopefully, nobody here is doing anything like this. Suddenly remembering somebody else. That will be a disaster. I remember at one time, this was long ago, I was staying in a hotel with a colleague of mine who had just got married. I was not married then. We were sharing a room and the conversation, we were in the room and just to get to know him, I asked him, "So you're married, so what is your wife's name?" He said, "My wife's name is Sheetal. Sorry, Rekha." So I was looking at him. He actually took somebody else's name and I asked him, "Your wife?" And then he corrected himself and I said, "Bhai, kya ho raha hai?" No. It just came out. Anyway, I didn't pursue the matter with him, but I still don't know the answer. So, what is actually deeply in our consciousness? Huh? We don't know. In fact, Rupa Goswami says that this is how Krishna should be in our heart for us as sadhakas. We should be like this paramour lover. I'm not talking about this person. Huh? I don't know what. I don't want to judge him, whatever his antecedents are. But in general, a person who's married but has a paramour. Paramour means a love affair outside marriage. And they are hiding it. Externally, they are doing all their duties nicely. Internally, in their heart, they are always remembering their beloved and waiting for the time when they will get to meet the beloved. So this is how Rupa Goswami says, this is how we should act while we are in this world. Should do as a husband, as a wife, as a child, as a student, as a person who's at work. All our duties thoroughly, but our heart is absorbed elsewhere. So even Krishna, when he is in Vrindavan, he is missing the gopis. And anyway, a lot of things happened in Dwarka. Eventually, Krishna wanted Uddhava get the association and learn about higher things about bhakti. So on the pretext of helping the gopis to be pacified, he was sent as a counselor. So he is considered the best counselor. Why is the best counselor? Because he's Krishna's counselor. Actually, when Krishna has problems in the Leela, Krishna never has problems like us. But in the Leela, when Krishna has problems in Dwarka, consults Uddhav. What do you think I should do? So this is the situation. I don't know whether I should do this. Then Uddhav gives his counsel. They're very, very close friends. They're actually cousins, first cousins. Very, very close. Uddhav almost looks like Krishna. Anyway, a very big topic. So Uddhav comes to Vrindavan taking Krishna's message, but the whole purpose, internal purpose Krishna is sending Uddhav there is to learn what actually devotion is. Even though Uddhav is the highest of the devotees of Dwarka, highest. When he reaches there and he sees Srimati Radharani, Srimati Radharani is displaying the most highest levels of ecstasy of separation from Krishna. So that is described in great detail in the Srimad Bhagavad. When we come to the 10th canto, we'll discuss. Try to hear. Again, that is post PhD topic. For our purification, we will discuss. Some drops will sprinkle on our head. Someday we'll be able to appreciate these topics. So that kind of mood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there. And Uddhav, when he saw that, he was like, Arey, I thought I am a good devotee. And he just felt so insignificant when he saw Radharani's love. So, sometimes you think that you are, you're a big guy in this, suddenly you come across some person that you feel so small in front of. Arey, I am nothing. I don't know whether you have ever had that experience. But Uddhav had that experience. And he was so overwhelmed by the quality of devotion of the gopis headed by Radharani that he prayed to Krishna, that give me a benediction. I just want to be a small lump of grass in Vraj. He didn't say, I want to be gopi. He said, this is too high. Small lump of grass. So that when the gopis go, they will step on me and the dust of their feet will go on my head. That's all. So in this way, indirectly, we can understand how glorious the gopis are. We can go on discussing so many things. The highest devotee of Dwarka, and Dwarka is just one level below Braj, is thinking that I want the dust of the feet of the gopis on my head. So Mahaprabhu was always in that mood. And that mood is a mood of intense separation. Separation to that extent that one is almost maddened. That means he would forget who he is. He would talk incoherently. He would talk things which wouldn't make sense. He was, almost like disoriented. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains some of the symptoms which Mahaprabhu would display in that period in the last 12 years. And I'll just mention some of these. And these are described, and these episodes are described in great detail in the Madhya Lila. So we come to that, we'll discuss. And day and night, practically, actually, it is said Lord Chaitanya practically slept very little or didn't sleep during this period. He is absorbed in this. He was pretty oblivious of the outside world. He would just come out of that mood briefly and then, again go back into that mood. And that's why, Swarup Damodar and Ramandra had to take care of Govinda, his personal servant, had to really be there to attend to him. Because he was totally out of the world, so to say. Oblivious to what is happening. We just totally absorbed in these moods. Just forget where he is and what he is and who. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said his talks were based on his madness. Blood would flow out from the pores of his body. For a sweat comes, his ecstasy would be so much that blood would start oozing out from the pores of his body. Sometimes his ecstasy would become so much that the teeth in his mouth would become loosened and would start chattering. They would not come out, but they would actually start moving. Sometimes his whole body would become slender, very thin. Sometimes his whole body would expand and he would become fat. Of course, these are temporary transformations. The room Gambhira in which the Lord would stay, it is said during the daytime, of course, all these devotees were there. At night, many of the devotees would be taking rest. It would so happen that the Lord would go into this mood, he would leave the Gambhira room and he would just, like mad, go and run into the streets. The devotees were so scared, bro. They don't know when Mahaprabhu will do what. So they started locking him up in the room at night. from outside. And he said the Lord would experience such pangs of ecstasy. It was ecstasy, but it was because it was the ecstasy of separation. It appeared very painful. A person who would be seeing him would see he's in extreme pain. It is said he couldn't sleep for a moment. All through the night, even though he was lying down, he would grind his mouth, feeling intense separation from Krishna. He would bang his head on the wall and he would grind his head on the wall. That much uncontrollable separation Lord Chaitanya was feeling. And his face would be bruised because of that in the morning. Devotees would be so worried that the Lord is hurting himself. Not just this, but even though Govinda and others would start locking the door from outside, they would sometimes in the middle of the night come to the room and find that the Lord is not in the room, even though the door is still locked from outside. They never knew how the Lord would just escape from the room because he's the Lord. And they would suddenly find him unconscious outside the door, Simhadwar of Jagannath Puri temple. And they would bring him back. So, what more they can do? You can only lock the room, but if the Lord disappears, so this is the kind of situation. Sometimes the Lord fallen in front of Jagannath Simhadwar is not bad enough. Sometimes they would find him floating in the sea of Jagannath Puri. They were like, they would be in so much anxiety, transcendental anxiety. Sometimes it is said Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would see some sand dunes. In Puri, there are certain places where there are sand dunes. It's on the coastal town, sand dunes. He would see a sand dune and he would think that this is Govardhan Hill. He would see a park and he would think this is Vrindavan and he would just rush towards it. Run. And the devotees, oh, where? And they would try to go and hold the Lord because he'll suddenly go and hurt himself because he would just go and jump and embrace that mountain and he would hurt himself at an external level. This at certain times his ecstasy would become so much that his body would get so transformed that all the joints in his body would get loosened. What does that mean? That his hands and legs, the joints would get separated by 6 inches and there would just be a lump of loose skin between the joints. Now, this is so far-fetched. These kind of transformations don't happen. Can happen only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If it happens to us, means we need to go to hospital. So it would become like that. There would just be some skin and the bones would go like this. And then, of course, when the Lord would eventually come out of ecstasy, it would again get joint again automatically. And when the Lord's body would get elongated, he would become like 10 feet, 11 feet long sometimes. So when the Lord would go into these kind of moods, also sometimes it said, sometimes the Lord's body would get elongated. Sometimes in ecstasy, the Lord's body would get contracted. In fact, his hands and legs would go into his body, like Jagannath's form, actually get contracted and retracted into his body. It was almost like a lump. So these are like unimaginable things. So as these various symptoms would be manifested, the Lord would be really, really in a mood of deep separation. His mind appeared as if it's vacant. Vacant in the sense that he seemed in an extremely depressed and hopeless state. The state where a person who's madly in love with someone is pining for the beloved, but is feeling so hopeless within. How will I ever attain my beloved? That kind of vacant hopelessness at a transcendental level. So Lord would pine, say, where is the Lord of my life? The one who plays the flute. What should I do now? Where should I find the son of Nanda Maharaj? Correct? Like in the Shad Goswami Ashtaka also said, He Radhe Vrajadevi Kechalarite He Nanda Suno Kutaha. Where is Krishna, the son of Nanda? Is he at Govardhan Hill? Is it on the bank of the Yamuna? Without association of Krishna, my heart is broken. So in this way, the Lord would, in that mood of separation, expresses bewilderment. For all this externally, a person who looks at it will think that this person has gone mad. Because it seemed like disappointment, it seemed like bewilderment, it seemed like lamentation. And when the Lord would enter these kind of deep moods, the Lord would actually recite various shlokas, because those shlokas were aligned with that particular mood. Some of these shlokas are from the Bhagavatam, some of the shlokas were from Ramanand Rai had written a drama known as Jagannath Vallabha Nataka. So he would recite those verses. And some of those verses are actually mentioned there. I don't intend to read them because they are too far out, and my mind starts reeling in bewilderment when I read them. Not because of ecstasy, but because I cannot fathom this. But mainly these are verses which is Radharani expressing her intense feeling of separation. And in that way, you know, how she's thinking, what she's thinking, oh, Krishna is like this, or like this, oh, I'm suffering like this, or this, that, this, you know, this kind of jalpa, pratijalpa. And this is what Uddhava noticed when he went to see Radharani, that whole conversation. Maybe some of these verses are from that conversation. I have not mapped them out. So there are many verses quoted, and the Lord would chant these verses. See, the summum bonum of these verses that Srimati Radharani is chanting is essentially that Krishna is so attractive, and I'm so attached to Krishna. But it's so painful to be away from him. It is so hopeless, but I still have hope someday I will see him. But I don't know how I will see him. I want to forget him, but I cannot forget him. So this is the gopis' problem. The gopis' problem is they want to forget Krishna, but they cannot forget Krishna. Our problem is we want to remember Krishna, but we always forget Krishna. So many of these verses, I'm just quickly going through this. So most of these are actually verses. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he would express this mood of separation, he would also simultaneously express a mood of very intense humility. See, the gopis were never proud, and Radharani also. Even sometimes they would chastise Krishna out of their pure love and affection. They have actually a deep feeling of servitude. And they were feeling so grateful to Krishna for accepting their service. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would oftentimes get into this mood, that he would come out from that mood, he would speak to Ramananda Rai and Sarada Damodar, he would say, I have no love for Krishna. My life is useless. Actually, I have no love. The acharyas explain that one who has intense love for Krishna genuinely feels he has no love. This is one of the characteristics of prema, pure love. So Mahaprabhu would also exhibit that. Those who don't have feel they have, but those who really have it feel they don't have it. So Mahaprabhu would also say, my life is like a poverty-stricken person. Whole body is useless. My life is useless. My limbs are useless. And then he would turn to Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai. So, you see, actually, if I had love for Krishna, if I really had love for Krishna, I would have died. How I can bear separation from Krishna if I really had love for him? So that was the sentiment. The very fact that I'm alive when I'm separated from Krishna means my love is fake. It's all pretense. I'm just being natak. He was not saying, see, my ecstasy is so wonderful. You saw my ecstasy? My limbs became like this, For us, if we, we will like to advertise if we have any, not like this experience, like this we'll never have. We all like to advertise. But Mahaprabhu is genuinely. He says, actually, whatever I'm displaying, is actually all fake. Because if I actually had love and Krishna is actually separated from me, I would have definitely passed away. My love for Krishna is far, far away. I'm just quoting what Mahaprabhu says. Whatever I do is actually an exhibition of pseudo love for Godhead. When you see me cry, I'm simply demonstrating my great fortune. Means I'm trying to show as if I am great devotee. In this way, I'm maintaining my fly-like life. So this is how. So love for the Lord is always, true love for the Lord is always accompanied by this intense feeling of humility. And that is why it is also one of the reasons why it is very difficult to identify a genuine premi bhakta, a devotee who has achieved the supermost platform. Because he will be so humble in his demeanor and he will project himself as so ordinary and fallen, people like us will become easily deceived. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami summarizes this kind of an experience of Lord Chaitanya by saying that, this kind of experience that the Lord had is both nectarine and poisonous. He says it is nectar and poison mixed together. Why? Because, there is an aspect of pain in it. There is an aspect of pleasure in it. So there is poison and nectar. Why? And then he compares it to a hot sugarcane juice. Let's say this sugarcane juice. Sugarcane juice is very sweet. But if it is boiling hot, somebody gives you boiling hot sugarcane juice. If you drink it, what will happen? The mouth will burn. But because it is so sweet, you cannot even stop drinking it. So this kind of a separation from the Lord is like that. It is very painful, but at the same time, it is so sweet to experience. So this is how, very wonderful comparison which is given by Krishnadas Kaviraj. Then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami goes on to mention one more, that whenever Lord Chaitanya, these are many pastimes which would happen in Gambhira and around, but when the Lord would go to Jagannath's temple to take darshan, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami especially mentions when the Lord would see Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra, the Lord would be in the mood of Radharani seeing Krishna in Kurukshetra. After 100 years, where Krishna is in the form of Dwarkadish, who has come to Kurukshetra, take bath in the Ganges, the pretext of the solar eclipse. Radharani and the gopis and the other Brajbasis have come also to Kurukshetra, and Radharani is seeing Krishna. And he would feel so pacified in his heart that he was actually able to see Krishna. So Radharani felt such deep satisfaction on seeing Krishna. But of course, she could not express her love because it was a very odd situation. The Lord was the king. He had many queens that he had married. Radharani had a family of her own. She's seen Krishna after 100 years. So Radharani controls her emotions. I mean, doesn't display, doesn't actively interact. She's feeling that intense love. So Mahaprabhu would stand behind the Garuda Stamba and he would look upon Lord Jagannath. So you can understand what is the strength of that love. He said Mahaprabhu would cry standing behind Garuda Stamba. He would cry so much that under the Garuda Stamba there is a ditch, which his tears would gather and form a small puddle. And the Lord would be returning from Jagannath temple. It is said on certain places the Lord would sit down on the ground and feeling such intense separation from the Lord, he would scratch the ground with his nails and make scratches on the rocks. Where is Vrindavan? Where is Krishna? Where is the son of the king of Vraja? Where is Damsidhar, the one who prays the food? Where is that person who is Shyam Sundar, who is Tribhanga Lalita, the beautiful threefold bended form? Plays the flute so sweetly. Huh? Jamuna Tatachari, Kunja Bihari. Where is that one who does vihar on the Yamuna, the banks of the Yamuna? Where is the Rasa dance? Where are his beautiful pastimes of singing, dancing, and that? Where is my Lord, Madan Mohan, even the enchanter of the... So the Lord would be filled with these kind of... It is said it was in these last 12 years, it was practically not possible to bring the Lord out normal state. And that is why the Lord's preaching, there was not really much preaching in the last 12 years from the Lord's side. His associates preached. The Goswamis did a lot of work. How to preach like this? The Lord's interaction would only be his very, very close associates. There are many more verses. What I can share from here. Please bear with me. It is said in his various ecstatic moods, contradictory emotions would erupt in his mind. So, he would seem like an emotionally unstable person, suddenly very happy, suddenly crying, suddenly very despondent. He would sometimes display anxiety, suddenly become very humble, suddenly become angry, all transcendentally. Not these are not displaying of modes of material nature like passion and ignorance. This was all the result of the madness of the love of God. It is said that the body of the Lord became like a sugarcane field in which the mad elephants of ecstasy had appeared. So elephants love a sugarcane field. And when they enter a sugarcane field, especially a mad elephant, he is just like, wow, just frolic and run around everywhere, tearing down the sugarcane like anything. So all these ecstasies would simultaneously enter into the Lord's body and they would erupt and would cause all these various emotions to be manifest. Lord would suddenly go into this mode. Oh Lord, oh my dearest one, oh friend of the universe, oh Krishna, oh restless one, oh only ocean of mercy. Oh my Lord, oh my enjoyer, oh beloved to my eyes, alas, when will you again be visible to? So all these symptoms of madness would actually trigger intense remembrance of the Lord. There would be simultaneously different feelings, feelings of love, disdain, defamation by words, pride, honor. Sometimes he would glorify Krishna, sometimes in the mood of Radharani, he would chastise Krishna. And in this way, the Lord would be always absorbed. He would be sometimes stunned, he would sometimes show trembling, he would sometimes have perspiration, his bodily color would fade, his voice would choke. So there are different transcendental symptoms which are described by the Acharyas. The Lord would display all of them, sometimes laughing, crying, suddenly dancing and singing, sometimes suddenly getting up and running somewhere, sometimes suddenly falling down and lose consciousness. And when he would lose consciousness, many times the Lord would go into a deep mood and he would enter into the Lord's eternal Leela. He would be with Krishna. Then suddenly, after some time, he would come back to external consciousness. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? He was just now with me. Why did you come? Why you woke me up, Sarup Damodar? I was with Krishna just now. So this kind of moods the Lord would enter. To nourish his own mood, this mood that he was experiencing, the Lord would also spend his time in reading some special books. And these special books were very, very special Rasika devotees. Two devotees are mentioned. The songs written by a great devotee Chandidas and another great devotee known as Vidyapati. Would listen to them because the mood that is expressed in this would actually nourish his emotions. Also, he liked to listen to the quotations from Jagannath Vallabha Nataka written by Ramanand Rai. We just discussed this. Also, two other books, Krishna Karanamrita by Bilva Mangal Thakur and Gita Govinda by Jayadev Goswami. So these are the 4 or 5 books that Mahaprabhu would love hearing. Either he would read it himself or Swarup Damodar or Ramanand Rai, depending on the Lord's mood. When the Lord would go into a particular mood, they would recite these verses just to nourish the Lord's emotional. And that is why we are like what I discussed. Most of the time, the Lord would be with Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai. Apart from these two associates, in these very internal moods, the Lord would also spend some time with other associates. One of those associates is Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri was elderly to the Lord in age. And in that way, because of that, because he was a godbrother of the Lord's Guru, we have discussed about that. His ashram or his place of residence is also in Puri, not far from Jagannath's temple. It's a very special well, the well of Paramananda Puri. It's a very special place. He experienced paternal affection with Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri, by the way, is Uddhava from Krishna Lila. With Ramananda Rai, he experienced friendly affection. Now, Ramananda Rai is a very special personality. Ramananda Rai is a combined incarnation of Vishakha and Arjun. So, two personalities, Vishakha, Sakhi, and Arjun combined to form Ramananda Rai. So these kind of combined incarnations are possible in the spiritual realm. So that's why, because he's also Arjun, he had a kind of a friendly relationship with Ramananda Rai. He had a mood of servitude in his relationship with Govinda and others, because Govinda would actually serve Lord Chaitanya as a servant. He was like his personal servant. And with devotees like Gadadhar, Jagadananda, and Swarup Damodara, the Lord would exchange the transcendental rasa of Madhurya. Why Madhurya with these three? Because Gadadhar, Srimati Radharani. Swarup Damodar, we already discussed, is Lalita Sakti, and Jagadananda is, if I remember correctly, is Satyabhama. So these are all the Lord's close consorts or Sakhis with whom the Lord has a well. So with these inner circle, the Lord spent most of these 12 years. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Leela Shuka, Bilva Mangal Thakur. Bilva Mangal Thakur is a very, very great associate. Great, but it's a very, very beautiful pastime. If you have not heard about the life and pastimes of Bilva Mangal Thakur, I'll encourage you to read about him. He's also known as Leela Shuka. Don't have time today, only 7 minutes remaining. But it's very beautiful. I read it, that pastime, in my childhood, and I have been so touched by a very sweet pastime. He became a Krishna devotee through very interesting turn of events in his life. From a sinful person from a Brahmana to a sinful person to a great devotee of Krishna. And he became very attached to Raj. In fact, Krishna Karnamrut that we spoke about is written by Villamangal Thakur. Mahaprabhu would read it. Can you imagine? If you write a book and Mahaprabhu, to experience Radharani's love, is reading it, can you imagine what would be the quality of that work? What is the quality of that devotee? So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says Villamangal Thakur was not an ordinary being, but he also displayed intense ecstatic symptoms. So why should we be surprised about the ecstatic symptoms of Lord Chaitanya? Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So obviously, if Leela Shuka is displaying extraordinary symptoms, then Mahaprabhu, who's God himself, will display symptoms which are so many times more. So we should not be too surprised. And why? Briefly mentions, why is the Lord doing this? Because when the Lord came as Krishna himself, he was not able to understand and experience these mood of Srimati Radharani. That's why he has come back now again to taste by taking the position and the mood of Srimati Radharani. So he wants to do it firsthand. He doesn't want to just hear about it. Experience. I want to be like Radharani. I want to feel it. I want to be. So Lord is like that. He wants to experience. What? So not considering who's qualified and who's not qualified, the Lord is not only experiencing this love, but he's distributing it to everybody. He's like a wealthy capitalist who has a touchstone, goes around touching that touchstone to every piece of iron to make it gold. So we are all pieces of iron. We are hoping that we'll be touched by the touchstone of Lord Chaitanya, that we will also become transformed to gold. What is that gold? The gold of Krishna Prem. The gold of feeling that kind of a love. Of course, cannot experience to the extent that what Lord Chaitanya is experiencing, because that is the ultimate. But in our capacity, at least we can take a drop. It's an ocean. Even that one drop can drown us. So the Lord is freely giving without considering who is qualified and is not qualified. That is why Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says Lord Chaitanya is considered the most munificent. Why? Because nobody else gives this. This is the highest of the highest, because even the greatest of the Devatas and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are hankering for this. And here Lord Chaitanya is giving that freely. That's why the Lord is most liberal. No other incarnation has given this so free. And then he warns, he says, like what we discussed earlier, such topics like what we have discussed in this chapter should not be discussed freely. Why? Because no one will understand them. But one who is able to understand them, the Lord will give very special blessings. And one should understand that he has received the Lord's very special blessings. And that the Lord has given such persons the association of the servants of his servant. This essentially means that unless one receives the special favor of the servant of the servants of the Lord, one cannot enter into the understanding of what we are discussing in this chapter. But we are not there yet, but we are at least standing in line. Someday we will reach the door, be able to have some appreciation. As he's concluding this chapter, he just conclude in a few minutes. As he's concluding this chapter, he says, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Mahaprabhu's pastimes are like jewels. These jewels are kept in a storehouse. Who has kept them in the storehouse? Swarup Damodar Goswami, because he directly experienced the Lord's pastime. He explained it to Raghunath Das Goswami. Because Swarup Damodar was taking care of Raghunath Das Goswami under Mahaprabhu's instruction. And Raghunath Das Goswami gave those jewels from the storehouse to me. I heard it from Raghunath Das Goswami, that is why I have written all this down. So this is how, whatever I am telling you, this is how I received it. Swarup Damodar, he told to Raghunath Das Goswami narrates to. And then there is one small section where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that some people are complaining that I am writing so many Sanskrit verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But please don't complain. Most of it is in Bengali so that everyone can understand. But for the purpose of authenticity and so many other reasons is there. By the way, the whole Bhagavatam is also in Sanskrit. The commentaries of the Acharyas also have so many Sanskrit. But don't worry, it is, most of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is in vernacular, Bengali, so there will not be a difficult understand. And then he says that, actually, I have briefly described the Lord's Madhya Lila here at the beginning of Madhya Lila itself, because I don't know whether I will live that long. So some things I have described here, but all these things I'll describe in great detail later. Because if I die now, I don't want these important things to be lost to the world. So I am quickly writing all these things. Our Srila Prabhupada also had this kind of a mood. He was writing the Srimad Bhagavat. When Srila Prabhupada went to US, he had only translated the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavat, 3 parts. Canto 1, part 1, part 2, part 3, and he took that as a trunk load of books. And he was translating. At one time, Prabhupada said, what if I die? I'm so old. I have not even reached Krishna Lila, 10th canto. What if I die before I translate the 10th canto? So that's why he wrote the Krishna book. Because the Krishna book is a summary study of the 10th canto. And actually, Prabhupada did not complete the 10th canto. Prabhupada departed from this world midway to the 10th canto. Interesting. Also at one time, when Prabhupada was translating Bhagavatam, he said, what if I die before I translate Chaitanya Charitamrita? Chaitanya Charitamrita is most important. There is no Chaitanya Charitamrita in English. Suddenly he took a marathon. Within a couple of months, he published day and night translation and kept everything else aside. Just focus on publishing Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the acharyas are so compassionate. They are so keen to give these works to the world, and that's why we are receiving them. So we are actually the beneficiaries of their sacrifice and their love and compassion for all of us. Kaviraj Goswami then says that I've given a synopsis. I'll describe all these in detail. If I live, actually I'm so old. Again and again, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, I'm so old. I'm so disturbed by invalidity. My hand shakes as I'm writing. I cannot remember anything. I cannot even see properly. I don't even know how I'm writing this book. Must be the Lord's mercy that I'm able to actually. It is a wonder that I am writing. So, with these words, he actually concludes this particular chapter. And so, summarily, the Lord Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has summarized the last 12 years in chapter 2 of Madhya Lila and the previous 12 years, which is 25 to 36, first chapter of Madhya Lila. So now he has essentially given a total summary of the Lord's Shesh Leela, which is the last 24 years of the Lord's manifest pastimes. The Lord's disappearance pastime was not described by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. It's not mentioned directly in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I do not know why. Perhaps it was too painful for him to mention about it. The Chaitanya Charitamrita concludes with Shikshashtakam, and the 8 verses written by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, generally, the pastime of the Lord's disappearance is very painful for devotees. Devotees generally don't like to discuss that. So anyway, I will pause here. It's just 1 beyond 10 as well. So please forgive me for any mistakes, and I beg forgiveness from the Lord also. Now, opening up the floor if there are any comments and questions. Okay. So if there's nothing, then we will end. So just want, before we close for the day, just want to mention for those who are in Kuala Lumpur, there's a Kirtan Mela over the weekend. Also, we are having the good fortune of the Association of His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday, he's doing a Harinam fields, Saturday evening. So if you are around, please take the benefit of his association. And especially known for his wonderful kirtans. So that will be very nice. So given that actually Saturday class we will not be able to have, looks like at this particular point in time. If at all the schedule is such that it is possible, I'll let you know. But as of now, I am just letting you know in advance that because when sadhus are personally present, I have to be at their feet. We can talk later. So I'll keep you informed, but most likely I'll be, because I don't want to say yes and then last minute, cancel it, which I've done so many times. I think it's going to be difficult. So if at all we miss this, then we will meet again for Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thank you very much. Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Panchatattva ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakta. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Pujaji. Thank you. Bhaskar, Suraj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol, Angulika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
My
Krishna.
phone,
Sneha ji,
my phone
thank
is
you.
so bad condition.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
No worries, man. Thank you for joining.
This Saturday we have Ratha Yatra Prabhu. So I was just thinking I should have missed the class, but luckily he's told that there is no class.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Rita ji, also nice to see you.
Yeah,
And I
thank
was
you,
wondering who's the person who's named a test. So now I know that it is you. So I think
Me.
you are testing me.
Prabhuji, I can't do that. Not in my capacity to test you.
You're all in sync. So thank you all very much. Have a good evening, and maybe remain absorbed in Mahaprabhu's remembrance, Krishna's remembrance, and remain Krishna conscious like that. All these pastimes are ultimately meant to give us subject matter to be absorbed in. By repeatedly hearing these subjects, gradually our heart will develop an attraction for it because of the spiritual nature of these topics. And then our real good fortune will arise. Please keep remembering and contemplating these wonderful topics. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.